Hello, everybody. Me plus glasses. I feel like most of you see me plus Adidas hat to protect my crown chakra. But with the soul I'm gonna connect with today, I don't really feel like I need to protect my crown. How are you all? How are you all feeling? Let me know in the chat. Oh my gosh, I feel like... Well, it's been ages since I've been on live, but there's also been a lot going on energetically. An extraordinary amount of energy going on in the world, and I don't even know where to begin with where my heart wants to go out to. I just feel like my heart doesn't even know what to do anymore because there's just so much going on. But how are you actually doing? Grand Rising. What's actually been going on in your energy? I'm very excited for today's conversation because I actually have a friend that's going to be joining me in a little bit, but I wanted to speak and pray over this space together because it's been really extraordinary. Once I get my dog's hair naturally out of my face, it's everywhere. If anyone has shedding dogs at this time of year. I'm going to be introducing my friend Marisa into this space, and we're going to have hopefully about a 30-minute conversation. We won't take up too much of your time, but it'll be potent. I promise. About 3 weeks or so ago, I went to LA to do a podcast with this extraordinary woman named Marisa. I didn't know much about Marisa prior to meeting her. Actually, I just knew she had this podcast called Tapping In, and that I was going to be a part of Tapping In, and I was like, I tap in, this is going to be great. And then when I met her in person, it felt like I had met a soul family. It felt like I had met somebody that was Italian and Canadian, and we were talking with our hands and we were laughing and joking. There was no, hey, how are you? It was just like, Mamma mia, familia. Like, it was the oddest and most extraordinary thing I had ever experienced. And it just gets so much better. And so we then begin the episode, and I'm honestly quite floored with not only her education about entities, but her desire to have conversations about entity attachments, to have conversations about psychic protection, to have conversations about taking care of your vibration. Like, these were not things that people around me really are talking about. You know, I've done a lot of podcasts over the last 6 months or so, and to have someone who's like not in fear, who genuinely understands this work, that has the maturity to be able to hold the conversation, and who's sincerely curious about this type of work, it was actually quite flooring to be a part of. I felt so met and so seen in this work, and it empowered me so much to be able to get some of the big messages I wanted to get across about psychic protection, interference, the cost of being in your power. And Marisa gave me the space to be able to talk about it. And now I have the honor of being able to bring her here today. But I wanted to give some backstory that this was the safest space I've ever felt to be able to talk about this type of work in the depth, in the maturity, in the wisdom, in the level that I'm working at. And it felt so gratifying to have an equal in this conversation. Not because people who I've had conversations with weren't equal in power, no, but just that I had never had somebody who was equal in sight. And so I'm so excited to have Marisa here to connect with me today. I'm going to bring her on live here. We've got some questions that we're going to tune into, but if you have not caught our most recent episode on YouTube, make sure that you're checking out either my profile or her profile, preferably hers, because you'll get the direct link to the YouTube link, but I highly recommend it because this is just part 2 and part 1 was super juicy. So on that note,
Hello, hello.
Well, hello
I
there.
am so excited to be back with you. I'm
You,
so excited.
yeah, I have been fantasizing about you, not in a
I
kinky way, but in a super excited way. I missed you.
Mine was kinky. Mine was kinky.
Hi, Marissa. How are
I am
you?
so good. I found it so interesting that our episode came out on Father's Day after sharing how our grandfathers were so a part of our growth and connecting to this great energy field. I thought, what? No way. They were up to something.
It's crazy though because I didn't even know when the episode was going to drop, and I went on my YouTube just like every other day and was like, "Oh, it's us, and we look amazing, and this is fantastic." So I also love that I had the shock value added into it because I didn't know our episode was going to come out when it did, and I was so happy to see it.
Amazing, amazing. And I wanted to let anybody know, my people, if you have questions, now is your time to ask Victoria because she is an expert on entities, on how to get rid of them, how to clean your energy field, how to replenish. So I'm super excited to have you here. I have actually some questions for you. Are you ready?
I have some questions for me too, I guess. Bring it on.
Get your head pop, pop. Get your energy hands ready.
I got my Italian hands ready.
I smack at the entities if they come on my way. Ka-cha! Where's my holy water? So I had a question for you. How do we not fall into victim mode, knowing all this stuff that we know about entities? Because sometimes I catch myself and I'm like, I feel that energy really stirring up inside of me, and I feel a little extra angry, and automatically I'm like, is that an entity? Right? Am I being hijacked right now? And my kids are like, no, mom, you're just being a jerk. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I don't think it's me. I think right now I am being hijacked because I get this impulse, right, of this energy where I'm like, how can I tell the difference where I don't blame it on an entity and it's actually me?
Well, I think what's important to recognize is that we have a human condition. And that human condition has certain stories and it has certain reactions to life. And so the easiest way to know is, well, do you typically go into that pattern when you're a little bit frustrated about something?
Okay.
Is automatic response when there's too many variables in your life? I know for me, having an avoidant attachment style, that because of my childhood, when I get overstimulated, I avoid. It's not because of an entity, it's because I'm overstimulated. But the main piece here is that I'm in discomfort, and that's coming from something in my conditioning, versus feels like I was fine and now I'm completely set off and it feels invasive. It feels like something doesn't add up and it doesn't feel normal to my conditioning. So for those of you who are listening, the biggest indication is like, is this very clearly a pattern, a story that I go into? And I like to say, that's growth, that's discomfort, that's reaction, that's trigger, that's projection, versus evil or nefariousness that feels like it comes unwarranted, feels like it comes and it's not connected to discomfort. It's actually coming from a feeling of invasion. It's coming from a feeling of foreign. It's coming from a feeling of, well, that's odd, that's off, that's not right. So the difference between growth and evil, I think, allows us to be able to discern the difference.
Amazing. So in that moment, let's just say I'm like, oh, this isn't me.
Yep.
Right? So then what's my next step? Right?
Yep.
Like,
well, thankfully, because in a situation like this, we're not talking about, as of this moment, something more significant than simply potentially a passerby spirit, or you went to the market, you came back and there's something clinging to your energy. We're not dealing with something to our knowledge right now of something really significant. So I want to follow a few different tactics. First thing I want to do is I want to command over my energy. What's so beautiful about this is you have this within you. There's a voice in you that would stand up for your children if anyone ever caused harm to them. There's a voice in you that knows how to stand up for what's just. There's a voice in you that knows how to stand up for your boundaries. It's not coming from ego. It's coming from this voice within you that knows how to be able to reclaim what you believe in. And so that's the energy that I want you to think of as you command over your energy in a way such as this. I am a sovereign being of light, and in this moment, I revoke any external entity, energy, being, or group that is attempted to infiltrate my field, my home, my environment, or anything around me. So first thing is you want to command to remove, adding in your belief and your strength. Next part of this is you want to restore your energy. So the next part of this is I'm now calling back my natural energy, right? I'm a sovereign being, I'm clearing it, and I'm now calling back my natural energy, bringing back my full strength of my energy, my aura, the protection of my auric layers, bringing back complete strength into my energy. So it is.
That's amazing.
So it's just this, it's a command, learning how to command over your energy that you have control over this, and then allowing yourself to be able to restore your energy and then notice how you feel. Typically, if it's just like a passerby spirit or some sort of external entity that just kind of came in and came out, right, it'll really.
Yeah, those ones you don't have to do as much heavy lifting.
Totally, because it's not requiring a constant fight, if you will. And when I say fight, when we're talking about external entities, it's not like the fruit ninja like we were showing you in the beginning. It's not like, you piece of crap, get out of here. It's not that. It's belief, it's faith, it's trusting that you are a sovereign being and combining that energy into your heart and opening it and saying, I'm actually not available for this. Like, this is not the timeline that I'm actually available for. I'm calling back my natural energy. It's full strength, it's full faith, it's full belief, and that's what allows them to move.
Yeah. I think that's the tricky part, or the part that we are now having to relearn. Yes. Because our automatic is, get out of here, this is my house.
Yes. Well, actually one of the questions that was asked to me was, what's the difference between an exorcism and entity removal? And with exorcism, it is very much casting out. But casting out and actually removing something, so this takes us even a hair deeper, removing the root cause of why something was created is different.
Now, that's based on an old program within the person. So does an entity attach to me, so to speak, if I am feeding an old program? Let's just say I am not worthy, or I have an addiction, or I was abused, I have trauma. Does that entity carry a similar story, and that's why it can kind of connect to me or lock into me?
In the same way that a parasite feeds off of certain foods that you eat more than others, the same sort of thing when it comes to entities, as far as my understanding. However, there's more sophisticated types of entities the more that we're talking about different dimensions. So, for example, we're making unconscious decisions to, consistently do heroin. Okay, that's my example. We don't know any different. It's all we knew. It's what we grew up with.
Right.
There may be an entity that has been bleeding through the bloodline. So maybe your mother had it, and then when your mother passed, it bled through the bloodline. Now you have it. Now you're going to give it to your children. There can be generational entity attachments that can weave through. That takes really big removal work, because we got to go back to the root cause and start to remove as it's impacted you.
Wow, that's huge.
It is, and that happens for a lot of people. Also, generational entities. So that would be an example of generational entities.
You're pulling that out.
Pulling, removing, bringing back their natural light, removing how it's bleeding through, right?
I've seen that in people where it almost looks like roots. Like you start to tug at something and you're like, oh, this goes a lot deeper. It's like a whole root in the pillar, into the chakras.
Yes.
It's like this living entity.
Exactly. And that's why something like, if you just picked up an entity at the market, it would be like, command, buy. Right. That entity was dormant and it only became active when you started to break through. Sometimes they can hide in your energy. Only when you start to break through can they start to expose themselves. So it's not even like you were intending to live unconsciously. Let's use the example of, you did heroin, and that was actually coming from an entity that bled through your mother's line. But let's say we removed it. But then once we removed it, there was something else underneath.
Son of a bitch.
Right? And let's say down here now, there's a different form of entity, but this entity is actually, an extraterrestrial, this is a really messed up case, but an extraterrestrial that had been hosting your energy and kind of hijacking your aura. But it was hiding because it wasn't right there when we had to clear the main root cause.
Right.
And so sometimes the challenge of exorcism is it's just casting out from a fear-based program instead of actually helping people acknowledge, was this something that was coming from your unconsciousness? Or was this coming as a byproduct of a breakthrough? Or was this coming because of multiple lineages of attack? Or was this happening because you actually did go to the market and that's how you picked it up? Real energy work allows us to go, okay, Marisa, 3 generations back, there was a significant, powerful woman in your lineage who had an entity attachment, couldn't master her lessons, and it's been weaving through to present day. So it actually extracts the root cause. And then to the next point of this, it actually restores natural order. So once we remove all of the entity stuff that caused the addictive patterns in the first place, now we can bring back who Marisa is in actually meant to be, which is the whole part that exorcism misses. It casts out, the person has a convulsion, there's a relief, praise Jesus, they leave.
That's where the movie always ends.
Yeah,
you're like, what happened
exactly
now?
it. That's why there's always a part 2, girl.
Yeah. Where's the good life now?
Yeah.
Where's her happily ever after?
That's why there's the Conjuring 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Come on. So once we remove that, and now there's also that feeling sometimes where we're empty, or all of a sudden this is unfamiliar, and who am I? Because this entity is no longer telling me who I am, right? So how do we start to restore now who we are at the same time as removing the old energy?
So if we're doing this on our own, and I know we mentioned this in our episode, but I feel called to bring this up again, depending on the risk of what you're dealing with, in the same way that if I broke my arm, I would not love and light my way to healing myself. I would get a professional to help me put on a cast and, assess if I needed surgery, do the MRI. Same thing comes when it comes to an energy healer. If you felt fine and then you felt like you came back and something got picked up from a retreat that happened a few days ago, then it's very clear that maybe you can be the one to remove this because it happened recently.
Yes.
You're super clear about the fact that your energy shifted.
Right.
And that's a different energy. So I just want to acknowledge, like, if there's an element of you that doesn't feel like what you're dealing with, you can be objective about, then it would be, it would be important to hire somebody. But let's say you were able to do this on your own in full strength and integrity. You removed it. And let's say it came from a retreat you went to a week ago, caught it, removed it. Now, the next part of this is you want to be able to line up the way that your mind, body, and soul is meant to be. So what's important to note is that entities will latch to light cords or dark cords in your energy. So either your strength, your light, your mission, your truth, your expression, your love, or your fear, your unconsciousness, right? To the point, your scarcity, your worry, your addiction, insert. And so you got to know where it connected, because once you remove it, it'll look like you're unplugging something from a socket.
Okay, can I ask you a quick question with that? So if an entity hooks into, say, my feel-good place, right? How do I then recognize it? Because I'm feeling great. Let's just say it's feeding off of this good feeling. How do I know that it's connected there?
Because even though it's connected to the light spot in your energy, it will have a significant decline.
Oh, okay.
So you notice significant decline, but it'll usually come as a byproduct of the thing that should be so natural for you that it makes no sense. Whereas if it's feeding off of my addiction, it's just feeding off of something that I've already perpetuated that shouldn't even really be there in the first place. So for example, when I had multiple nefarious attachments, they hunted me down through lifetimes and actually fed off of my light cords of my power, of my spiritual strength, of my full abilities. I thought my gifts went from here they all are to health decline, to confusion about my purpose, right? To feeling an extraordinary amount of scarcity, right? So it's kind of pulling off of my light cords, but it took my breakthrough and completely altered it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good.
I'm like, so much good information. I feel like I'm like, yum.
Good. I hope this is beneficial for everybody who's receiving it.
Yes. Do you see any questions that are popping up on the screen?
There might be. Took me 3 days to recover. I'm still struggling. I'm a healer. Recently was working at a healing expo. I felt a sharp shift pain in my lower back as I was working on a beautiful soul. It took me 3 days to recover, but I'm still struggling. One thing that I would encourage you to do if you're still struggling, I would really amplify your cleanse, command, and close practices. So you'll see on my page, for those of you who are not in my world and you want to be, or you just want to scope it out, there's one post that says, steal my 3 C's. And it's not too far down, so it shouldn't take you too long to find it. It's, cleanse, command, and close. Practice that by fully cleansing your energy, commanding over and over, and actually taking the time to close down. If you do that multiple times throughout the day, let's see how the energy shifts.
Yeah.
But to the point about restoring, why is restoring so important and it's so often missed is because we take an attachment, we remove it, and then it feels like, to your point, I feel empty.
Yes.
What we want to do is we want to reinvigorate what feels natural for us. So you can welcome in subconscious work at this time, right? One of my favorite things to do is EFT, that actually amplifies my natural strength. So working on my subconscious, actually doing tapping. Another thing is actually focusing on deepened self-care in the places that you can tell you're of deep need at this time. Really working on your mindset to bring back in your faith, bring back in your trust, call back in your natural strength. So now we're trying to line up mind and body with the soul removal. And then what you'll start to notice is where it was empty, you're now becoming full of your natural energy. And that's a sign that you've done accurate work.
Yeah. Victoria, brava, brava.
Thank you. I'm so white.
Good.
Can you tell I haven't seen my grandparents in far too long?
Some people are afraid sometimes to do plant medicine because they feel like if I do plant medicine, I'm not really in my body. What if something hijacks my body? What do you think about that?
I think that motivator is a really important part of this conversation.
Okay.
What if I told you that you didn't need to do that? You did not need to entertain any plant medicine if you were not called in truth. I want you to know you're an extremely powerful being. You can open up everything you desire, and it will come in natural order if you're called to plant medicine in truth, and if you're not. I think the thing that trips people up is the motivator for people behind a lot of plant medicine is I'm curious about who I truly am. I'm curious because a lot of other people use these plants. I'm curious because people have had transcendental experiences, and I desire that as well. What a world would we live in if we did not make spiritual, vulnerable decisions from curiosity and desire? I would never have a client again. But because everybody's curious and nobody knows how to curb their impulses, and because everybody desires to be somewhere else other than where they naturally are, I'm always booked out with clients because someone ends up being called because someone else basically got called, and then they thought that they were called, but they were really just curious to go explore a plant that was not actually calling them in truth. Then they go to a certain space that was, really kind of coming from somebody else's perception, or because they saw somebody that they desired that did it. And so they go vulnerably, not actually aurically, mentally, emotionally connected to the resonance of the plant. And so then what ends up happening is that you go in and it's like dissonance with resonance. And then you open up your field and this plant's like, well, now I'm going to fuck you up. And then you have, now you're going to have a crazy experience. And people are like, all of this stuff happened, and then they leave, and then there's all of this other stuff that happens. Or then they're at the space, and then all this crazy stuff happens. And so what I encourage anybody who's desiring to explore plant medicine, I encourage you not to desire to explore plant medicine. And I encourage you to pray over the truth. If the medicine calls you, then you know that there's medicine in the calling.
Got you.
If the medicine doesn't call you, then don't pick up the phone. And then train your body to know that you are powerful enough to be able to be okay, and strength, and your gifts are going to grow, and you're going to understand who you are without it, because if it was meant to be, it would be. That's power. And that's what I would love to introduce into the world of plant medicine.
That's very valuable information. It's so true, especially because sometimes I feel like we have to pressure sometimes, right? Because people are like, oh, did you try this? Have you done this? And you're like, oh, no, I I haven't. Am I supposed to?
Yeah. You're like, wait. I'm a 30-year-old being. Or, I'm like, I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions. And now look at me getting into peer pressure like I did when I was 13, trying to fight the kids to get the last swing. Like, we're kind of in the same energy a lot of times, especially when it comes to spiritual exploration. And I think it's really important for us to know when enough is enough. And when enough is when we actually realize that where we are right now is natural, and that whatever is meant to be is going to be. And that truth will come to us in perfect timing. And then can we train ourselves to be safe in that? Someone asked thoughts on attending events such as Dr. Joe and other facilitators similar. Here's what I will say. First things first is I would never want somebody to speak poorly about my work. And I would never want someone to be like, Victoria Pipo is a fake healer who even though I believe in everything that I do is in full truth. And I'm also not holy enough to know that something could happen and I could be off the track. Like, I totally believe that I'm a student and a teacher at the same time. However, to name drop what I know to be true about someone else, I would never do in integrity.
Right.
So that's that. Let's eradicate the name just to begin here. The second part of it is this. If there is a group space and there's any opening of any chakras or any energy centers, there needs to be a significant vetting process. And if there's not, I encourage you to proceed with caution, because there's a lot of harvesting that is happening. And what is harvesting? Facilitator has an entity attachment, maybe knows it or doesn't know it. I'd like to believe that they don't know it, because I believe that people are kind if they're doing big work like this in the world, but we don't know. I don't know, and I don't care to know. However, what they do is they end up grooming everybody. They're at the space, getting them into vulnerable places and opening up their energy centers. And entities want to grow in strength. That's their job. It's like a bully on the playground. If I have more, the merrier, because it can feed off more life force, right? It's like 5G, like more towers, the better, right? More strength. It makes everybody else foggy, but at least I've got speed. And that's what ends up happening. Mm-hmm. So anybody who's called to group work, like, I think it's so important, but it's also, to me, more important that you can really feel that that person is leading with protection, intention, and you can feel that they really truly care about vulnerability in a space, psychic protection in this space, and intention in this space. All three of them equally matter.
Again. I know, I get so into it when you talk. I'm just like, yes.
Someone asked, Marisa, is that okay if I ask?
Yes.
Okay. Someone says, how to know if we have entities if we can't remember the moment we may have gotten them. I was in Bali and wasn't practicing spiritual hygiene. So how to know if we have entities and we can't remember the moment? It really depends on how much it feels like it's impacting you in your life. But no matter what, in my opinion, in order for it to be accurate, we got to find out when it attached. Right? Like, we got to find out what was as close to the possible root cause is it? Because if I remove it at 25, but it happened at 16, I'm not removing from the root, so it's still there, right? The full strength of where you were energetically and how it contributed, whether connecting light cords, dark cords, where it attached, it doesn't matter unless it's right. That's why exorcism is only as valuable as the fact that something gets removed, but it just continues to host. So I would recommend, if you feel called, to reach out to somebody that you trust who can research it and look into it. Because a good healer, in my opinion, will always focus on root cause healing, not maintenance healing. You don't need maintenance. Like, let me just make sure that you get a little bit more hygiene. No, you need what caused the problem in the first place. And then do they have the skill to be able to remove if needed, and then to be able to restore natural order.
Now, can I do that? Let's just say I can't afford a healer right now.
Yep.
What could I do to kind of receive that download for myself? Like, can I sit, meditate? Do I write in a journal? Like, how do I try to find when that initial entity attached to me, right? Like, I'm just like, what's my process here?
So I'm going to share something, and I hope that it resonates with those people who it's meant to, but it might be a little bit off-putting for some people.
Okay.
When you expose it, it grows in strength.
Okay.
And it is attached to a part of you that it is feeding off of. And so when it grows, if you do not have the capacity to be able to neutrally and with an unbelievable amount of love cast it out, then that's like saying, let me go into complex trauma by myself, sitting in a room singing Kumbaya. It's dangerous. And so in integrity, I can't say, go look for it. I'll give you a horrible example that happened to me when I had multiple nefarious attachments. I had this Akashic reader that told me, she confirmed what an expert healer had told me, which was that I had an attachment in my energy. She told me, different than, okay, so the actual good healer told me that I had entities that had been searching for me through past lives. This Akashic reader told me that I made this entity. It is a sentient AI being that I created. And she told me to grab a ruby stone and call it forward into my energy and talk to it about why I created it. Like, it makes me emotional to think about, because I think if I listened to that at the beginning of my journey and I was fucking petrified,
Yeah,
that I would be here having this conversation with you. But this was two healers that were considered to be experts. And if I would have taken a 1-degree shift and been like, I'm the power, I can do this. I remember my healer that was actually accurate at the time was like, if you believe this nonsense, like, I can't help you. But I didn't know how to discern what was true or not. I had to just find that guttural feeling that was like, well, that feels really fucked up to do that. I don't know that I can consent to that. So my point in this is that if it feels like you're not in a position to be able to face whatever could be, I encourage you to hire a professional that knows what they're doing. And if you cannot afford it, then I encourage you to pray over the truth. Because you have to remember that somebody who is truly doing this work, I don't believe that these are my gifts. I believe that God gave me these gifts. And I work with the Christ light. I work with Jesus. I work with the frequencies of pure unconditional love that I don't believe I made happen. I believe that God has given it to me. And if your soul is meant to be healed and get on its natural path of life, then I have seen miracles like nothing I have ever seen in my life. We make money with energy. And so if you can lean into faith and trust that God's hand is here, then let his hand be there. Instead of being like, I have no other choice. I have to be the one that takes this. And then you open up something that is already exacerbated and then it implodes. I don't recommend that.
Somebody is asking, how did you remove entities?
I had no money in my bank after making $1 million in cash, and I walked to a place to get a loan that had a 48% interest loan. And I walked out with $12,000 and paid my healer.
Dang.
How I did that. I had no money. I made $1 million and I spent it and spent it and spent it, because part of what the entities were also feeding off of was a part of my dark chords, which was that as a child, my mother would always say to me, we will never be rich. We will always be poor, but we'll never look it. So when I started to make money, I started to wear expensive clothes to look like I was rich, and deep down I was empty, and it kept feeding off of that part of me that's like, I'm valuable, I'm on purpose, I'm valuable, I matter. And so when it came to the time that I actually needed the support, I had no money to be able to afford it.
Wow, that's crazy. See, for me, that's where I would get confused, because I would think, oh, that's just an old program. But you wouldn't think like, oh man, maybe this is an entity and an energy that's actually feeding off of that poverty. And I actually have to stand in my truth and reclaim the abundance, reclaim the love, and let that go.
Yeah, and I think the fine line here is like, when does it become a black tunnel that you feel like you can't get out of, versus like, to the point, like, this is a story I just go into. This was something I got sucked into. Like, I would make $10,000 and then go spend $10,000 the next day at Burberry. Like, I don't even really, naturally, I don't care about any of those things. Like, I'm a very simple person, but it was driving in, out, like a vacuum versus a cycle. You know, it's like, oh, well, every time I get my luteal phase, you know, I'm going to yell at the person next door. Like,
yes,
you know, if you can think about it more of like a vacuum, for those of you who are visual, versus like a cycle where it's like, oh, I just once and again, I just repeat that same story over and over again.
Okay. That's really important.
I think so.
Because I think everybody's got that entity. We're all like, we must remove the poverty entity.
And now everybody left this afterlife talk being like, we all have entities. That's not what I want.
Tell me, I need to go get an appointment.
I don't want this to feel like that, because this is truly meant to be as educational as I possibly can, as we possibly can, about spreading the word about the fact that actually, honestly, as sensitive lights, these things do happen.
Right.
And it's okay. We're not broken. This is sometimes a part of our path, and sometimes I feel like they come in to help us rewrite the story. Sometimes they are completely off of our natural path of life. You know, it's in the same way that it's unfortunate, but sometimes it's natural for people to experience disease in their life. Sometimes it's spiritual. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's natural order. Sometimes it's not. That nuance comes from somebody who can truly see with an objective eye, so that we don't think one thing is another thing and now we're caught in psychosis or, God forbid, something worse.
Right. Trying to name that entity. Which one is it? Who's on me right now? I don't know. I need to call Daria. What's that number? One of those like 967 1212.
12.
Remove the entity from me now. This is so good, because it's, I think, for all of us to start getting back to our center, for all of us to ground, go back into that heart space, and to really start to discern when something doesn't feel right, that the power is within you, that you don't have to continue this loop-de-loop.
Yes. And ultimately, your natural path will feel very uncomfortable when you are following your intuition. It's like bump, bump, edgy, bump, bump, this is so crazy. Yeah. There's a narrow path, and you're following the narrow path, and it's taking you forward. You can feel like, I'm uncomfortable, Barry, is this gonna work out? But the trajectory is like opening up, you know? Whereas when you're dealing with something external, it feels like every time I open up, I get sucked into this vacuum. Every time I try to move forward, there's a missing link. This is when we're talking about something different. But I do think it's important to realize that sensitivity is a strength, and this does happen sometimes as a byproduct. But if you stay on your, this is truth, this is right for me, this is true, this is right for me, then you're creating less loopholes in your energy for something like this to happen.
Yeah. I think what I love about us working together is my work is very much about old programs and dense energy in your field, in your body. And I'm constantly helping you to remove that. And you do that as well. But at the same time, it's the removal of the entities. It's like, once the energy field is clear and we've removed those old programs, I think you can discern now when you have an entity, because it's going to feel so different.
Yes. And it's totally it. It's like, how do I know when my screen time is at 7 hours? I'm caught in 3 conspiracy theories right now. My dogs are fighting all around the house. I have loops open because I haven't prepped my energy at all. It's like, how do I know what it is?
Right.
That's why in the Sovereign Healer, which is my school where I talk about psychic development, some people get really triggered about the fact that in the first month, I tell people they need to meditate inside.
Yes.
Their inner tantrum comes out. And they're like, I don't want to meditate inside. That's oppressive. I'm like, what? Controlling variables so you can hear yourself for the first fucking time in your life is oppressive? We need to have a conversation about what that actually means.
Yes.
We need to Google that word, because meditating in a controlled space allows you to start to hear spiritual information. We need to remove the variables, which is very similar to what you're doing. It's like, we need to remove the toxic variables.
Got it.
Yeah.
You have to start inside out. Get rid of it all.
Totally. How are you going to hear?
Right. Because how do you trust yourself? How do you know if somebody's in your house if you don't even know what your house feels like?
That's a great. My house is cluttered all the time. I wouldn't even know houses live in my house. I wouldn't even know.
Left and right. They're having drinks on the couch. You're like squeezed up in one corner. You're like, I just live with them all. We're all friends here. Yeah. We love chaos. Chaos is us. Yeah. But it's so good. This is so important. And also, I think reminding everybody that to have fun, to remember that you're powerful, to remember that you are love, and that everything is already inside of you, right? And again, it's like reclaiming that power, and that we have helpers like you, myself, that can guide you through this process. And we're all here. We're all having a human experience. We're all trying to help each other. We're all trying to cheer each other on, because we all want to feel that light. We all want to feel that unconditional love.
Yes.
And the more we practice it, now using this unconditional love, I can dissolve.
Yes.
I felt like I had to fight before, right? My little passion, it's just like, I'll kill you. Get out of here. I can finally start to approach it with, like you sovereignty, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, I just want to be loved. My space is clean.
Yes.
I just want to feel good. I want my water. I always think of myself in a hot tub, and it's just like my water to be the temperature that I want it to be in. And brings in one of their little floaties. I'm like, all right, you can hang out here for a second, but I'm going to take your floaty out now, right? As opposed to everybody coming into your space, and now you're squashed, and you don't know the difference between, is this an entity? Is this just an attachment that, you know, somebody, like you said, somebody at the grocery store? Is it just I was too open? And it becomes so overwhelming that you lose yourself even more. You have these critic attacks, and then you're like a buffet for the entities. You're just like, I can't do it anymore.
And you know, you didn't start your awakening just to feel like you're being open was a vulnerability, right? Like we didn't do all of this work just to feel like the work was always just going to be the work. Like we didn't do this for it to always be in a process. We did it so that we could be in the deepest integrity and the clearest light to be able to serve the world. And so when your openness feels like a vulnerability, we have work to do, right? When your openness feels like you have no control, we have work to do.
Yeah.
Right? When you being open means that you're constantly at the helm of burnout, we have work to do. Yeah. The openness should come from this feeling of, I'm here and I'm open by choice. And when I close, we're done here. And that can come from the right energy. And when we actually learn how to feel our unique rhythm and feel our natural energy, be able to clear what's not our natural energy, then I believe we have the thing that we all deeply desire the most, which is to know our own soul.
Yes.
Know why our soul is here. Why you're here, why I'm here, why everybody in this audience is here. Like, I think deep down, that's what we really want. We want to know, who am I? Not what the told me and where I'm going in the afterlife.
What should I be? How should I show up?
Totally. And I think all of that information at a certain point of your awakening is so important, because you're in the mind-blown paradigm shift, like, holy shit, like, I'm a soul having a human experience. And like, there's a curiosity phase, that validation phase that a lot of people go through for a certain amount of time, but then there becomes a deeper intelligence that wants to wake in you. And it's actually, you have all that information, but now let's integrate, right? You have all of that insight. Now let's make it yours, right? And that, I think, is what clearing the entities, removing that interference, and really working to come back into our clean home gives us is, this is my space.
So good.
Right? I'm
so
the
good when that
space.
happens. You're like, yes.
Right?
Also, when I started renaming the heart as my bridge, so I no longer as, you know, me having to open myself to other people and what that looks like, but just me allowing the cosmic energy to run down and earth energy to run up. So kind of like I have my pillar, which has this beautiful flow, and through that I share around me. So now it's no longer poking into anybody else, but it's like this beautiful cycle of you being you, right? And then it feels so good because it's you. It's just you. It's clean.
Yeah.
It's clean.
And it's so satisfying when it's you, because then you can be you and I can be me, and there's no agenda other than just you and me, right? It's like, that isn't that what we want? Not like, oh God, I hope Marisa doesn't think I'm this, and oh, now I'm in shame, and oh God, what if the audience thinks I'm fucking crazy? Now I'm talking about entities. God, everybody thinks in the spiritual community.
Where's my holy water? Where's my holy water?
I need to grab the bundle, grab the stage. Like, it just becomes this whole thing, because now I can't even be me, because I'm more afraid about how you perceive me than me being me. It's like, we got to come back to me. Yeah. Like, before we began, I said this amazing prayer, and I just said, God, use me. Like, none of these messages are even mine.
Right.
Just use me as an instrument allow me to be the conduit for whatever my soul's message is. And then that's it. Not, I hope everybody approves it, or I hope everybody likes it.
Give me a thumbs up. But, yeah,
like, share, subscribe, and if you don't, then I'm never coming on live again.
Yeah.
Validate me, because if you don't,
yeah, who am I?
Yeah, the entity will validate me then.
I got my boys right here. We're gonna have a good time. They're gonna be a little gargoyles on either side. Oh my gosh, this was so amazing. I love our talks. I can feel like we could talk for hours.
It is crazy how we can be where we are, not even close to each other. And I feel like you're right here. I said to Hayden before, I was like, I just want to hug you. Like, I just wish I could hug you, because I have absolutely loved feeling you and feeling so safe with you and feeling just such resonance with you. It's like I met a soul companion in this life. Yeah. And so I'm so glad. I hope this was beneficial. I saw some beautiful comments. And so I hope this was of service to everyone. And if you haven't caught our full YouTube on Marisa, you can talk about it if you want.
We have our YouTube video that just came out on Sundays, and it's called Our Entities Hijacking Your Mind. So go and check it out. It's really amazing. Victoria shares more tips and techniques to help you if you feel like you're being overwhelmed by entities. It's really incredible. And I feel like your work is really in such high alignment, and it's coming from such a beautiful heart space, which I think is amazing. It's so important right now. It's so important for us to be grounded and just to share the message. So again, thank you for your wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I feel the same way about you. Thank you for holding this space. Thank you for being the light, and thank you for allowing us to do this again. Like,
I'm like, what are you doing next Monday night? We're talking about entities, removals of entities.
I was free. Anything, honestly, anything for you. And I have a feeling that I'll see a whole bunch more of us together. If everybody liked it, then we're going to come anyway, because we need you to like it. But we really appreciate everybody who's found a lot of value in this, because it felt important to add a part 2, part 1.5. Yeah. And I feel really thankful for today.
Amazing. Ciao, Bella.
Thank you, love. Ciao, Bella.
Bye, guys.